Rachel Mealey in Tokyo to see how this city is arming itself against the threat of excessive flooding.
And I'm Russell Beard in the Netherlands, where a new wave of architects and urban planners are adapting to climate change by working with water rather than against it.
And I'm Gelareh Darabi in Afghanistan at the country's first national park, where a dedicated team of rangers are rebuilding a nation through conservation. These hills were once home to 2 giant Buddhas. Their destruction by the Taliban in 2001, a symbol of Afghanistan's violent past. Decades of war not only destroyed these man-made wonders, but over the years destroyed the area's once pristine natural wonders, as local villagers hunted the wildlife, overfished the lakes, and chopped down the forest to survive. But as the country slowly rebuilds itself, there's new signs of life. I'm Gelareh Darabi en route to the Band-e-Amir National Park, where a dedicated team of local rangers are working hard to convince their communities that protecting the environment is the key to stability. We've made it, Bamiyan town, one step closer to Band-e-Amir. Band-e-Amir gained national park status in 2009, making it Afghanistan's first national park. Over the last few years, the park has hired and trained 26 rangers, including Nikbacht and Jahanbeen, a local couple who have invited me over for breakfast.
چند تا چیز براتون آوردم برای صبحانه. برای اینکه هیچ وقت دست خالی نشد. ممنون. خوب هستی؟ خوش آمدید. سلام.
Jahanbeen says the park is visited by thousands of local tourists and pilgrims every year, but foreign tourists are scarce.
وقتی که در رسانه‌ها میشنون که افغانستان مثلا انتحاری ترور کشتار با فکر میکنه کل افغانستان همونطوریه. طوری نیست این استان خیلی امن است.
اینجا بسیار زیباست.
بسیار امنه.
Many families are starting to see the economic benefits of conservation.
این کیه؟ این دوست شماست؟ Oh my god. منو دوست داره.
In a country where only 16% of women work, Nikbacht is a hero to her family. But it wasn't always like this.
شما پس صبح قبل از که میرین سر کار برای چند نفر باید صبحونه حاضر کنین؟
برای 18 نفر. قبل از یک خانه بودیم. تو وظیفه‌ای نداشتیم. به جز از بچه‌داری.
این اولین کار شماست؟
بله اولین کار ماست.
اول که اومدین از شوهرتون پرسیدین اجازه هست این کارو بگیرم چی گفتن؟
شوهر ما که پرسیدن خوشحال شدیم دیگه. گفتم وظیفه داریم، ما این وظیفه را پیشنهاد داریم که به حساب یک رنجر زنم باید باشه. گفتم وقتی رنجر زن باشه دیگه بهتر از این دیگه چیه؟
ما روز این رنجر زن زیاد باشه چون اینجا جمعیت مردم زیاد میان. توریست 10,000 نفر میان.
After breakfast, it's time to get dressed for work.
خودتون رو میبینین تو این یونیفرم چی فکر میکنین؟ خوشحال هستی؟ خنده گنده دارین؟ مردم وقتی میرن سر کار انقدر خوشحال نیستن. میبینیم. مامان چطور شد؟ خوشگل شد. خیلی خوشگل شد.
Nikbacht has asked me to join her team and meet the rest of the park's female rangers.
Ranger for the day. Just a day, though. Oh, yeah, we look cool.
And now it's time to hit the road. This road into the park was once heavily mined by local militias. Now it's taking us to the park's headquarters, or ranger station, where every morning the team divide up duties between them. The women told me competition to get their jobs was tough. Fatima believes it's their protective natures and persuasive charm that got them in.
ما یک ذره میتونستیم حرف یک جای برسونیم. ما میتونستیم یک نفر میگفتیم خواهر برادر تو از اون بر بری یا مردا از این بر بری میتونستیم این حرف بزنیم. مردم که قبلا می اومدن اینجا برای شکار، برای ماهیگیری، برای چوب کندن، برای خونه‌شون ما نمیذاریم. ما که ببینید نمیذاریم. دیگه نمیشه. نه.
I asked them how villagers are able to survive if they can no longer access the park for food or firewood.
از توریستا میتونن پول در بیارن. کسی که گاو داره، ماست میفروشه، کسی که اتاق داره، اتاق خود کرایه میده، غذای تمیز درست میکنه برایش میده.
The female rangers mainly work with visitors in the park.
It looks like we've got our first tourist of the day just coming up the path. We're gonna greet them, welcome them to Band-e-Amir National Park, and let them know that we're keeping an eye on them. Salam, خوب هستین؟ بفرمایید. خوش اومدین. خوش اومدین.
And then it's off for litter duty. Changing Afghan visitor attitudes to conservation can be challenging.
The rangers are pretty suspicious of the group of people that came down that hill and set up on the other side of the lake. So we're actually going to get across by pedal boat to see exactly what's going on.
Disposing of rubbish is still a major issue here, but these ladies are determined.
خوب هستین؟ سلام. خوش آمد. چه روز خوبیه برای پیکنیک؟
It took some negotiation, but eventually the picnickers agreed to clean up after themselves.
Two of our rangers, Sadiqa and Cobra, have been kind enough to take me off on a little nature walk, just to teach me about the area and where they've been learning about for the past 2 years.
Management of the park is a joint effort between the Afghan government and the Wildlife Conservation Society, a global organization who have given them training in environmental protection.
این چیه؟
مثل این بسرق بوده.
That smells amazing.
این برای مریضی فشار کسی که فشار بالا داره اینو مثل چای دم میکنه.
The women tell me having a job has impacted on their traditional roles in the family.
الان خیلی خوب شده دیگه این کار داریم هم یک کمک خرج برای شوهرامون میشه برای خودمون میشه دیگه هم با مردم رفت آمد داریم.
مردمای محل ما هم افتخار داره که خدا رو شکر بند-e-Amir حالی که بینگری لینجر زن داره. گاه موقعی که بود وای زن که کس دید درس بخونه. درس نه قدیما فکرشون بود زایدن بود.
واقعا خیلی خوبه یه زن جامعه افغانستان کار کنه.
شما هم اولین رنجر هستین تو این کشور.
These fragile mineral-rich lakes were once the site of destructive fishing practices, like the use of hand grenades, which is hard to imagine considering most Afghans feel they have healing properties.
I really just hope that the whole world gets to know about Band-e-Amir National Park. This, honestly, is one of the most beautiful places I've ever laid eyes upon. I hope everybody gets to find out about it.
The next morning, I travel with the wildlife tracking team, who are constantly monitoring the animals in the area. We set up a camera trap to see if the elusive and endangered Persian leopard has been crossing these paths.
So we got to make sure we shield this camera trap from the sun. This is going to be here from 2-3 months, and the sun might really affect it. So we're going to test out the camera trap that we just set up. I'm going to pretend to be a leopard and walk across the path that we've identified and see if it captures my image. خوبه؟
حالا هر چیز از این دیتیل‌ها
بله. این میگیره. پس الان داره از ما عکس میگیره. Okay.
And it captures images like this, or even this. These poachers didn't realize they were caught on film. The rangers hope this footage will one day be used as evidence in court.
We're going to take coordinates of our location using a GPS, just so they can remember where they put this. Right now we're at 2,908 meters above sea level. چی می‌بینید؟
The park takes a strong stand on not arming their rangers. Often rangers know the local villagers breaking the rules.
They work very closely with the local police. So if the situation is one that they can't handle, if there's a large group of poachers coming with guns, they can collaborate together to stop them.
The government hopes the park will become a top tourist destination in Central Asia. There's still a long way to go changing Afghan attitudes towards nature. But after a morning spent on a weekly cleanup, it seems to me the future of the park is in good hands. It may not have been the goal from the very start, but by implementing a conservation plan in this untouched setting, things like opportunities for women and security have flourished in this country that's desperate for a new start.
Greater Tokyo is the world's biggest metropolis, housing 35 million people and stretching for miles in every direction. Each year, about 1.5 metres of rain falls on this city, and as the climate changes, there are more and more episodes of torrential downpours. Harnessing it and preventing the city from major flood damage is a huge task. I'm Rachel Mealey underneath the metropolis of Tokyo, learning about how this city is fortifying itself against excessive flooding. Tokyo is built on a floodplain and is interlaced by more than 100 rivers. Over time, business and residential neighbourhoods have sprung up around the rivers, using every inch of available space. This means that when it rains, there's nowhere for the excess water to go. The city's urban planners have come up with an ingenious solution, an underground river system. So here we are in Saitama Prefecture, which is about an hour's drive from central Tokyo. We're here to meet Professor Akira Kawamura. He's from the Tokyo Metropolitan University. Hi, Professor.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yoroshiku
welcome to this facility.
Thank you. It looks like very ordinary surroundings, but what we're standing on top of at the moment is one of the most extraordinary pieces of infrastructure in the world.
Yes, underground river facility.
Let's go and take a look. This is the way in? Wow, the scale of this is just amazing. What is it and where are we?
This is a stormwater drainage tank to store the water to pump up to the river.
The stormwater tank and the tunnel that runs into it took 13 years to build. This giant underground cavity captures the rainfall runoff in this region to reduce the flow downstream into Tokyo. So, Professor, why is this facility needed?
This facility mainly needed for preventing the inundation of this community area, but eventually these gathered water actually from the 5 rivers go to the Tokyo, so reducing the flow to the Tokyo, so eventually preventing the Tokyo flooding.
So in a time of very heavy rainfall in this area, in Saitama, which is north of Tokyo, the authorities basically open up the channels here and fill this place up like a bathtub to prevent that water moving towards Tokyo. Is that right?
Yes.
Professor Kawamura says the overall amount of annual rainfall in and around Tokyo hasn't changed much over the years, but the nature of the rainfall has, meaning more and more episodes of heavy downpours, which can dump more than 50 millimetres of rain on the city in an hour. Do you see that change in more episodes of torrential rain, is that to do with climate change?
Yeah, they say, but no specific evidence, but probably, yes, high chances.
And they also talk about an effect that happens in Tokyo in the summer months, particularly called the heat island effect. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, okay. The past 100 years in the world, 0.7 degree increase per 100 years. But in Japan, 1.1 degrees increase the past 100 years. However, in Tokyo, the increase is 3 degrees.
Really?
So the difference around 2 degrees are due to maybe the heat island effect.
Wow, look at this enormous cavity. It's like a big concrete cylinder, and I hesitate to ask, but how deep is that down there?
This shaft is 70 meter deep and 30 meter diameter.
Wow.
And Statue of Liberty is completely inside this hole.
Professor Kawamura and I are now travelling to central Tokyo to see another part of the underground river that's still under construction. Another huge structure. It's a 10 metres in diameter, is that right? And do you know how long does it run?
どのぐらいありますか? 3.2 kilometers.
3.2 kilometres all the way down there. Tokyo's underground river system is nothing short of awesome, but it didn't come cheaply. Altogether, the 2 sites we've visited have cost about $2.3 billion US. So above us here, we've got quite a lot of residential areas around us.
Yes, very prone area, but inundation and damage is much because properties are concentrated in this area.
So this is obviously a decision that's been taken in Tokyo to build this underground river system at an enormous cost, but it was critically needed in Tokyo.
Yeah, critically needed in Tokyo.
He says other cities can learn from Tokyo's lead. Instead of responding to flood damage every rainy season, the city has spent the money to prevent the flooding before it happens.
As the climate changes, the world's coastal countries are under ever-increasing threat from storm surges and sea level rise. But here in Holland, they've had centuries of experience designing a complex network of ditches, pumps and dikes just to stay dry. I'm Russell Beard and I've come to the Netherlands to meet an innovative group of architects and urban planners who are leading the way in designing for a wetter world. The Netherlands is one of the lowest lying countries in the world. Over a quarter of the nation is below sea level, so they've always battled to stay dry. But with sea levels rising, they're stepping up their game. In the town of Katwijk, engineer David van Raalten is working on coastal defence.
We have 900 meters of dike underneath the dune. We have no idea that there is a massive piece of concrete underground.
Although this looks like a beach, it's all man-made. This state-of-the-art sand and concrete coastal barrier is part of a €20 billion water management programme that includes shoring up the country's sea defences for the centuries ahead.
We would like to know what happens with our coastline in the next 200 years if we go for the most extreme scenario of 2 meters of sea level rise.
What are we talking about here when we're talking about sea level rise? What is at stake? What's the risk?
Well, the risk is that we have a breach in our coastal defense line, and then a large part of the Netherlands will be flooded. We have worked for 800 years already on water management in the Netherlands. That has been our struggle to keep our land safe from the sea, and that's what is at stake. You know, can we protect our country for the future also? And knowing that 2/3 of the country is under threat of the sea, something needs to be done.
You're planning for the worst?
We're planning for the worst, yeah.
This is nice, isn't it? What do you think of when you hear about sea level rise and the danger of flooding?
We have to buy a rubber boat, put it on the attic, just in case. Huh?
Yeah. You don't think you can hold back the sea forever?
No, I think it will take more 200 years, but eventually we have to give it back to the ocean.
While the Netherlands doesn't plan to relinquish large chunks of its land anytime soon, a growing number of engineers and architects argue that as well as fighting to hold back the water, it's about time to learn how to live with it. So we're looking for Koen Olthuis. He's part of the Netherlands' new wave of aquatects. He's waiting for us.
Hey, good afternoon. Hi. Hi,
Russell.
Good. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Nice to meet you. For those who've never heard of it, what is an aquatect?
Well, I think an aquatect is an architect that uses water to make cities perform better. We know we have all this climate change, we have urbanization, and we think on water we can have that all. If your city is threatened by water, I think the safest place to be is on top of the water. My name is Olthuis, which means old house, and my family from my father's side, they were all architects. Right. And on my mother's side, they were shipbuilders. She's called Boat, and they build ships. And I thought, now, who will please? My father, my mother, building boats, building houses. But bring them together, it all makes sense.
Koen's idea comes down to some pretty simple technology. Floating foundations that can support a new generation of buoyant buildings. You wouldn't have known that they were floating.
Yeah. If there would be a flood over here, these houses would rise up. There are stilts next to it, so they can glide up and down.
These homes are built on floating foundations of steel wrapped in a watertight material, with concrete weights in the basement to keep them stable despite their height.
They expect here, in the worst case scenario, a meter, meter and a half of water. And then these houses can go up and down with that.
Hi there. In the past 12 years, Koen's created nearly 100 floating homes in the Netherlands, ranging from amphibious houses to houseboats to these modern water villas. Olaf Janssen moved into his home near Rotterdam last year.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Russell. Hello. Hi. You could swim under that if you wanted to.
If you'd like to, yes. And this will be the last place here. Open space for one house. Yeah. So you see the other side.
Amazing. Beautiful, man. Oh, but this is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Because it's now a little windy, you don't notice anything that the house is moving. With a houseboat, then it starts moving already, and this house doesn't move that much.
Does this do justice to your concept of the floating house?
We talked about the evolution of houses. We had the small houseboats in Amsterdam, first as steel ships, then as concrete slabs from 5 by 20. And this is not a houseboat anymore. This is a regular villa, 3 stories, completely sustainable. It doesn't need that much energy. So yes, this is absolutely a step towards what I think should be done on water.
At the moment, we're talking floating houses and mansion houses. Who's really going to benefit?
You see here is called old school architecture, floating architecture, because the things we're now already thinking of are much larger and much. This is for the rich. You have to go to high densities, floating apartment buildings, floating solutions for slums worldwide. Now, but it all comes down to the technology that we innovate here in these big, huge, beautiful villas, and see how we can distribute that over the world to other neighborhoods next to the water.
Although Koen spends part of his time designing floating islands for the world's super rich in the Maldives, Dubai and China, he believes his technology can make a big difference to the people who are most vulnerable to the rising seas.
Every day, 100,000 people worldwide go to cities. That's a city in itself, every day. There is not space enough in these cities, so the people take the space that's not been occupied yet. And that's mostly the most vulnerable locations next to waters. We think that at these locations it's the most interesting to bring some of the functions that last and that are less vulnerable. So you can bring in there energy, clean water, even some housing, and all these kind of functions we can just put on floating barges.
From health clinics to schools to sanitation services, Koen sees the potential to adapt his technology in order to provide services not normally found in informal settlements.
For a city, it's very difficult to bring in new kind of buildings because then they would accept the fact that there are slums. So we have to do it more in a temporary way. We bring in floating functions, which also can be taken out immediately. So there's not a formal status for that. And it means it's much easier to go through around the rules and upgrade life over there, because in the end, that's what it's all about.
That's interesting, because this is a world away from the $14 million floating mansions in the Maldives, isn't it? This is a different universe.
It is different if you look at it upon like architecture and who is using it. But the floating technology and the safety and how we treat that environment is exactly the same.
Floating services in slums and floating homes in the Netherlands are all part of Koen's central idea of embracing water and designing cities that can change and adapt in the face of an uncertain future.
If you look at a city as a living thing, then you also know that we have to try to change the DNA of that city. Because we don't know exactly what climate change will bring us or what urbanization will bring us. But I think our city should be ready for that.
I'm in Slovenia, where a new initiative is turning nylon waste into wear.
Yeah, you can actually feel on this platform how you're going back and forth by the force of the wind.
Look at that! It looks like you've got a shark on the end of a fishing line.
That's correct.
A really big one.